Hi guys, welcome to my second YouTube video where we'll be learning to make almond flour cookies. This is a simple recipe that has 5 or 6 different ingredients. For this recipe you'll need almond flour, tapioca starch, baking powder, maple syrup, vanilla extract, and melted butter. I usually use plant-based butter. And I'll add all this into the description below. Using 2 cups of almond flour, this recipe should make 6 to 12 cookies. I originally found this recipe a few years back when I tried finding a cookie dough recipe that would cater to all my allergens. This recipe does have a few caveats, but I have my workarounds I found for them. So you want to add around half a tablespoon of baking powder. You don't want to put too much dry ingredients because then you'll have to increase the amount of wet ingredients to make sure that your cookie dough, when it's done baking, it doesn't just crumble apart. You want to add about 2 tablespoons of tapioca starch, and for every cup of almond flour you increase, you want to add an additional tablespoon of tapioca starch. When I first started making this recipe, I had a lot of problems of the cookies would crack or they would just fall apart and not hold well unless that the cookie was stale and became old. So I did some research and I found out when it comes to gluten-free recipes, things like almond flour and gluten-free flour don't hold moisture very well, and because of that they don't bind very well. So I figured out that you can use tapioca starch to create a more gummy-ish mixture, and it'll hold the dough together a lot better. A good tip is to buy your tapioca starch at a local Asian store. This I think is about 2 pounds, 1 pound. It only costs about $3 versus in the regular supermarket it'll cost about $6 for a lot less starch. Okay, so now we'll add 2 tablespoons of vanilla extract, or you could just substitute a 1-for-1 with vanilla paste. So now we'll add 3 tablespoons of maple syrup. You can add a bit more if you want a stronger flavor, but don't put too much. Your dough will come out too wet, and you'll have to bake those cookies longer, as well as you'll have to let the cookies rest longer to make sure that they're not too wet and fall apart. And lastly, we'll add a 1/4 cup of melted butter. I completely forgot to melt my butter, but it still worked out in the end. It just took a little longer to mix. But plant-based butter, they usually have less fat, than regular dairy butter. So that's the reason why tapioca starch is a little important in helping the mixture stick together and the cookies come out whole instead of falling apart. So you'll preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and you'll bake your cookies between 15 to 22 minutes. It just depends. The time depends on how thick your cookies are, how big they are, and how wet your dough has come out to be. Another tip is if you line your baking tray in aluminum foil and then put some oil on the aluminum foil, the cookies won't stick to it. And all you have to do is just lift up the foil off the tray, and then that's one less dish you have to worry about washing. So when you mix the batter, you want to get it as crumbly as you can, and then you want to start using your hand and start pushing and massaging the butter into all the bits of flour. It'll eventually turn into a nice ball, but for a while it will stay this crumbly mess. So now our ball of dough is mixed pretty well. We can start making our cookies. If you rub your hand on the oil that's on the tray, it'll help with preventing the cookie dough from sticking to your hand. So the technique I'll use is I'll flatten the dough in the palm of my hand, and then I'll lightly tap the outer edge to kind of fill in and minimize those cracks, so that way they don't spread and split the cookie open while it's baking. I could have probably made these cookies thinner and they would came out a bit snappier with a harder outside and a soft inside, but they still came out okay. So again, we'll flatten in the palm of our hands, then we'll lightly tap the outer edge. Here, I kind of want to just show you guys that you can put chocolate chip cookies if you wanted to do that instead of just plain vanilla maple syrup. So just add it in, and like before, it'll take a while to mix and become one mixture. For here, with all my allergens, I found in the market a pretty much allergen-free chocolate chip cookie that only had like cocoa powder, cocoa butter, water, and sugar. So our dough, after much kneading and massaging, has finally come to, and it'll fall apart while you're trying to shape it. It's just those chocolate chips in the middle that make it a bit harder, but try your best. And lightly tap the edge so you get rid of all of those cracks. Then the bake time will vary. When it's done baking and looks a little golden brownish on the ends, let it sit in the oven with the oven off. That way the inside cooks a little longer because they will be wet with this recipe. I kind of just want to show you guys that using the little aluminum foil trick and putting the oil on top of it, it's really easy to just wiggle the cookies off. You just have to let them sit for maybe 5 minutes so that way they hold their shape just like any other cookie dough, and they'll just wiggle right off. And here you can see that inside is still pretty moist. It's really soft. But if you let the cookie sit a little bit longer, the outside will get nice and snappy. I actually think these cookies taste even better the day after when the outside is sort of hard and the inside is still nice and soft. Oh, and here, just showing you the little trick now. Just lift off the foil, rinse off the tray, and now you're done. Bye.